Welcome to the Working Fans Podcast, where today we have a fellow content creator. This is George from the Wrestling Today podcast. How are you doing today?
Pretty good, man. How are you doing today?
I am doing excellent. Wrestling is at such a good point right now. How did you discover wrestling? Who got you into it? Early favorites and memories.
My first memory of wrestling was flipping through the channel one day with nothing to watch on a Monday night. And what do I come across? A white, bald headed man cussing out some other guy in the middle of a wrestling ring. And that guy would be Stone Cold Steve Austin. I guess the
That
beginning
is
of the Attitude Era.
That's such a wild memory to start with, too, especially if you're just clicking through the channels, trying to find something to watch, and then you find one of the most compelling characters ever to step into a WWE ring. Your mind must have been blown after seeing that.
Oh, man. Being a kid, at that time, I would have been 8. And you're just like, man, what is this? Like, why is that guy about to beat up that guy? What's going on? Of course, my parents were like, oh, I guess he found wrestling because they were in Texas. So obviously, Texas back in those days was big, Von Erichs, Fabulous Freebirds, all them guys in the Sportatorium. They were also in the Rodeo Center here in Mesquite, Texas a few times. And my parents and grandparents gave me some memories of those times as well. It just came natural to them to tell me about it, and then I was like hooked instantly once I started figuring out what it was.
That might be the last generation that can discover wrestling like that, just
Mhm.
blindly flipping through the channels with nothing to watch, because now there are so many options. But back then on a Monday night, if you didn't like whatever NBC, CBS, ABC was showing, you're clicking through channels and you make it to wrestling, and that is infectious. I was kind of the same way, just somehow on TV one day. I remember wrestling coming on, and for me it was the old Championship Wrestling, the mid 80s WWE show, where they're putting on the wrist tape and he's walking down the hallway about to make that turn into Madison Square Garden. Just seeing those, the first time you see wrestling, it's unreal. How did your fandom grow? Did you just stay WWE?
Uh,
Have you sought out other promotions?
well, obviously, Monday night, like we just said, you can easily flip to the other channel, like 2 stations away, and there you go, WCW. Monday Night Nitro. I started with just those two, and then of course ECW would come on late night. Those infomercials, like get your videotape today, come watch ECW, and all that. And then obviously start subscribing to magazines, and going to the grocery store with mom, you'd find more stuff there, like action figures and stuff.
Magazines, another thing that's almost going away as technology goes on. For older wrestling fans, especially, I mean, more so in the 80s, but I think in the 90s it still was a way to get wrestling around. And Raw magazine, WWF magazine, stuff like Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Back then they had multiple magazines about it, and even when I was younger, WCW had a comic book that I would pick up, and it was just a way to take in these wild characters and get behind some of your favorites.
Oh yeah, I still subscribe to Pro Wrestling Insider. I got a few magazines behind me.
I recently got back into it, and I love that subscription because PWI 500 comes out, you're on top of it. Now they've added things like the women's, God, they've got to be up to 100 by now, but I think it's still the women's 50. You've got the tag team issues, you've got the end of
Oh,
the year issues. So much wrestling talk that gets you excited. What point did you go from becoming a fan to you're like, I have to talk about this, I want to start creating content around this?
it was about 2022. I was just laying in bed one night and I posted a video of Edge's return, obviously 2 years later, but I posted the video and it just blew up. We got over like 50 something thousand views. And obviously, this was on TikTok. And I had just pondered with the name Wrestling Today podcast. Like, I just created it, posted the video, and it blew up. And I was like, okay, maybe I got something here. Posting old clips or, newish old clips, and maybe posting older clips to see what reactions I get. And then obviously the rest is, history. Here we are now.
The creation of the name, was it just off the top of your head, or what was kind of your mindset when going into it?
Oh man, I came up with a few names. They just didn't, catch my eye as a wrestling fan. Obviously there was like wrestling guy or the wrestling guy, and maybe wrestling podcast. I wanted to keep the name wrestling,
Yeah.
but I was like, how would I catch someone's attention? Like, who would
It's
want to click on the like that name?
It's funny, names can be like that because when the 3 people that came up with our podcast were originally kicking around, I think the first name that was thrown out there was Working Man's Podcast because obviously fans of Dusty Rhodes, we all work day jobs, but we wanted to do this on the side. And I liked it, but it felt too on the nose. So it's like, how can we change that? And then Working Fans was close enough. So it's funny the journey you could take in a podcast to the name you start with in your mind to the name that you end with. You talked about posting old clips. Were you technically proficient with any of this stuff before starting the podcast, or was it something you kind of learned as you went on?
Well, the podcast aspect of everything didn't come around till like 2020, 2021. Learning how to video edit and all that. Obviously, we were all stuck at home in 2020, so you had to pass the time with something, right? So I
Yeah.
just started like doing little vlogs and stuff and posting it to TikTok, YouTube, and obviously as time progressed, I just started searching online. How do you do this? How do you do that? Next thing I know, I'm buying like a little $30 mic, and then I upgraded to like a $100 mic like yours. And then obviously I'm buying the soundboard that you see over here, and then cameras and everything else.
Yeah, and I wonder, was it the same with us where, you start out with us, it was just audio and a phone. And then
Yep.
we linked up with a podcast network who's like, have you guys ever considered doing video? And we're like, no, we haven't thought about doing video. And then they put us on to StreamYard. That's how we discovered StreamYard. And then once we're putting out video, how do we make this work for us? Once we put the StreamYard up, taking that audio, putting it down as our podcast, learning ways to save ourselves work. But it's just, yeah, one thing after another. We knew we wanted to step up our sound game. So we bought soundboards. Luckily, the government was giving out money during that COVID time. So we just made use of it. And then it's just been dedication ever since, putting out weekly episodes, learning how to do these things. And much like you, searching out videos on the net. And one thing I've really liked, and I've noticed it a lot on TikTok, but you get it with content creators as well, is if you link up with a creator that you know and you enjoy their stuff, you can ask questions about how they do things. And that's kind of, you and I had linked up on TikTok. And then you had mentioned the camera switcher during one of our talks. And I'm like, I've got to get that. And then being able to reach out and find out how does that work is valuable. How is the content creation? I don't know. I guess I just got lost in the question, but how's the journey been for you? Have there been any content creators that have helped you?
There are some that will help me out. Like you may know him or may not. Know Your Wrestling Know Your Wrestling.
I've seen the name. Yes.
He's really smart with some of the stuff. Like he knows how to, promote himself. So that helps me out learning how to do that more. And then my boy Soto619, who's also on TikTok, been in your live and well in your chat a few times.
Awesome.
Obviously, he's also helping me learn how to, use the hashtags and stuff a little bit more. And then, I watch a few other guys like Heel Mike and they just, keep me knowing that I need to stay true to be as a wrestling fan. So they help me
Yeah.
with that. But the technical side, like we said, I just had to go out and look for those answers because I did all that before I met those guys.
That's one thing I found is very important in content creation and connecting with an audience is being true to yourself and talking about what you enjoy. Are you a bigger fan of classic wrestling? Do you keep up more with modern stuff? Where do your interests in wrestling lay?
I'm one of those guys. If I start something, I gotta look into the past, present, and future, right? And plus, my uncle, who isn't with us no more, he was a big wrestling fan too. So he used to fill me in on stuff that happened before my time. Like the beginning of WrestleMania, and obviously he stopped at 2005, and I kept the tradition going.
And that's kind of great. You can honor him in that way to keep up that fandom, especially if he's someone, that took the time to clue you into that. It's always great to have those older family members that can tell you about what happened before in wrestling or give you their thoughts of that.
I do have plenty of friends that keep me up to date with stuff too.
One of the great things about being on social media, especially TikTok, it's such an active, hungry community where people just enjoy talking. And I've noticed it's less negative than I thought it would be. Wrestling internet can tend to be a toxic place, but I don't know if it's the corner of TikTok that I found that people, for the most part, are positive.
Oh yeah, it
I've
took a while. It took a while to find that part of TikTok in my early
even
days. I'd get the trolls, those guys that would just come in and say, it's fake, right? It's just a soap opera. It's a bunch of grown men touching each other. Like I'm like, really? You came all the way over here to tell me that stuff? Like, get out of here.
Yeah, it's like obviously we know that, but we're more interested in the storytelling part of it. We're interested in it's not only history, but it's history that's ongoing. In terms of the WWE, it's a 40 plus year journey. Go back
Oh,
even further, pro wrestling overall, 100 plus years. And
oh
it's
yeah.
not what it used to be, but it's an ongoing story no matter who's in it.
Yeah, I mean, you can just tell by the posters behind you, like how much it's evolved. You got was that Jerry Lawler in the background?
Jerry Lawler and Andy Kaufman up in the corner there, one
Oh
of the
yeah, and
greatest old school feuds
like
before wrestling and Hollywood even really connected
yeah.
famously.
And, that's just a prime example because, you say 100 years, right? Like back then, no big names were back there like from Hollywood. Then you get to like Andy Kaufman time. He's one of the first ones to get in there and get dirty with the rest. Then
100%.
then you fast forward to now, you got guys like I don't like the guy that much, but Logan Paul, Bad Bunny, like they're getting in there and actually getting physical with these guys now too.
And
Just
doing
bringing
it
them.
at a great level too.
Um,
Surprising for what you would think for people that have a celebrity outside of the WWE to come in with.
Yeah, like Bad Bunny, I didn't think he could do what was it, Canadian Destroyer
Yeah, I did
on
not see
John
that.
Morrison? I was like, "Where did that come from?" And then Logan Paul and Ricochet had that moment in the Royal Rumble last year. I was like, "Really now? Like this is where we're going with that?"
It's
Just
great to see them matching up with these Hollywood stars with the stars from these federations. Now, getting back to the content creation a little more, do you find it hard to get inspired to put stuff out there? Or how is the creation process for you when you want to make a video and get it out?
with wrestling, if it always has its moments of true inspiration, right? And they
Yeah,
never
like you have
leave.
things that are timely, like getting things like fresh in the news cycle.
And there's always something going on. If you think you can't find something to give you inspiration, like they'll give you something to be inspired by. Like, there's like those feel good moments, like we'll go back to 2020, like, that's one of the biggest moments in wrestling. A lot of fans were like kind of discouraged with wrestling for a little bit because of, where we thought it was going to go. And Edge comes back,
Yeah,
the
that
Royal
was
Rumble.
mind blowing.
We were all like, "Man, we need something to, pop in this Royal Rumble, we need something." And then number 20 something or whatever he was in, and he comes out, and I'm like, "Holy crap!" Because I'm sitting in my room, kind of a little bored because it's AJ and Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, if I can remember correctly. And it's just like I need something to pop this Royal Rumble, and then bam, Edge comes out. I'm like, "Holy crap!" Said something else, trying to keep it PG though.
Yeah, and that would definitely pop it off. Even more excitement with seeing where the wrestling business is going to go because for the first time in the 40 plus years, we have somebody different at the head of
Oh,
the biggest wrestling company. And I
oh,
think wrestling philosophy is going to change just as much from Vince McMahon Jr. to Triple H as it did when you went from Vince Sr. to Vince Jr. What do you think about
oh.
Triple H coming in and the change that we're seeing in WWE?
Oh man, you can just feel the energy in that place now. I think that's where we're all coming together on. We can all agree that wrestling is 100% different with Triple H at the head of the table now, taking a slogan from Roman Reigns. But yeah, with Triple H now in charge, it's like the fans are actually in tune with everything.
We're getting what we enjoy. We're not getting forced something that you can tell the company wants to put out there, and people are definitely responding accordingly. Where are you with AEW at the moment? We try and stay away from negativity for the most part.
Oh
AEW
man.
has done some things lately that makes it hard to stay away from the negative. So being as positive as you can about it, where are you with AEW?
So I'll give AEW its due. When it comes to a lot of the wrestling aspect, like in ring work, a lot of those guys have it well. Like they know what they're doing. They know how to put on a show. But when it comes to the stories backstage, the promos and all that, those are questionable moves from them. What was it last week? I've said it to several people. Like last week, they had a good kickoff to their show with that TNT title match, and then they kind of buried it with all that crap they pulled. And I was like,
$100%.
if they focused just like doing stuff like that opening matchup, that opening segment with Samoa Joe getting attacked, letting FTR and Young Bucks just focus on the match and less on what WWE guys are doing, then the storytelling and the in-ring work would just mesh together really well, and people would want to buy tickets and sell out the 15,000 plus arenas. When you see the pictures people put, I don't know if they're just trying to be negative or what, but it's kind of discouraging to see, like, man, this product could be good, but that kind of crap brings it down.
I know some of the pictures, what people like to do is they like showing the side where the camera is. So you're going to get a lot of that blocked off seating. Another thing, it was a recent AEW picture. You see the arena and you see that it's only partially full. But if you
Mhm.
notice on the ring apron and on the big screen on the stage, it said Ring of Honor. They tend to tape Ring of Honor before the big show
Mhm.
or after the big show.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why you're getting partially filled arenas. Not saying that they're that much more filled up when it's full, but AEW also tends to do a very long show.
Oh
It'll
yeah.
be enjoyable. You'll get great matches, but you feel like you're reading a 500-page book because you're there 4 hours and you got 35 matches in that time.
Oh yeah, definitely that. Cause I have had friends that go to AEW shows and they'll say, "Oh yeah, we went to Dynamite and followed by Collision," or they went to Dynamite and it was followed by Rampage or ROH, or they did that before the show started. I don't know. Some people say it's live. I'm not 100% sure if it's live every week. Dynamite, or is it
Dynamite, I
pre-recorded?
believe it is live most weeks.
Most weeks, yeah. So so sometimes when I'm looking at those pictures, like, come on, is this for real? Like, I don't think they had a really good show and that many people showed up. I think there was more.
Yeah, there's definitely I think people wanna take the piss out of AEW, and they take the pictures when they take them, and then post them, and it's easy to say nobody was here without, showing the full story.
Yeah, because they do that to WWE sometimes as well. Like they'll go and they'll take a picture before the show starts, like an hour before. Because I went to SmackDown in Dallas this past March, and of course, some people took pictures before the show started saying it's not sold out. I was like, what? What are y'all talking about? People are still coming in.
Yeah, and that's I think one of the things that kinda worries me about the wrestling internet sometimes is that toxicity to it, and I talk about it all the time on TikTok. I'm glad it's something that at least on TikTok. And it might just be the audience we've cultivated on this show that we don't see as much of it, but it's one of the big knocks on the wrestling internet community, right? Is how toxic it could be, how people pick one side or another and say, this is the wrestling you need to watch. That's garbage over there. And not realizing that all wrestling is good. It's just what particular flavor do you like? And just because you like this type of wrestling doesn't mean that that other type is necessarily bad. It's just not for you.
Yeah, I can agree with that because obviously I'm a big WWE fan, and I'm not much into AEW, but I will tune in and I will watch. And if I don't like it, I just flip the channel. If I like it, I'll keep watching. Because there's been times like we talked about, they do certain things. I'm just like, okay, I'm done. I can't do this. But I have, I do watch it. I'll watch, Collision after SmackDown sometimes, and I can't catch Rampage too often because can't watch too much wrestling. Sometimes you get fried a little bit, and because we're in a
Especially a show that's critically undervalued. Like, how often does Rampage have a match that you have to see? Not too often.
not too
Collision is
loud.
where that weekend viewership tends to be pulled, it seems.
No, yeah, man, because wrestling is on what every day now.
And even
It's
if it's not on every day, You've got streaming services where you can watch it. If let's
No,
say you don't have cable and you're missing Impact on Thursday nights, you can
oh
sign up for ROH. ROH is that night. You got
yeah,
Triller TV. There's always wrestling to
yeah.
watch. Like
Even TNA, TNA, they have the $1.99 subscription on YouTube. You can watch their show on Thursdays from there. I'm just like, wow, okay, because you don't want to pay an extra $10 for Access TV or whatever it's called.
that's such a good option too because we've talked so much today about WWE, NXT. We haven't even mentioned TNA, and they have been. I mean, I say WWE has made big steps to growth from getting away from Vince McMahon, but look at the steps TNA has come from
Mm.
being Impact Wrestling, being the joke of the wrestling world, to slowly becoming the sleeper show that could be one of the best out there. They have a pay-per-view this weekend that the
Mhm.
card is amazing,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's just like they're just underseen because not too many people think about them.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to Moose versus formerly known as Dolph Ziggler. Can't remember his new name.
Nick Nemeth, do you think he
Nick
takes
Nemeth.
that
Yeah.
title in that main event?
He could. That's going to be a good matchup, and I'm actually happy for Dolph Ziggler. He got away from WWE. Now he's making strives to be a top guy somewhere else.
Yeah, looking great in New Japan, looking great in TNA. You've got matches like Josh Alexander versus Hammerstone on that. Mustafa Ali versus Jake something. Mustafa Ali, another guy critically underused in WWE,
Oh man,
goes out on the independents and is having a run that I don't know if anybody would have seen. I mean, had they not followed him since before WWE.
I've always followed Mustafa Ali, man. That dude, him and Ricochet, you put them in the ring together, or him and Cedric Alexander, them dudes would put on great matches. And the way he would talk, and I'm like, man, they're not using this guy to his full potential. The moment he got released, I was like, okay, I got to keep up with him, see what he's gonna do. And then he showed up in Texas, and the next thing you know, he's in Impact or TNA, whatever you want to call it now, right? Now he's on the card to be at a pay per view.
Yeah, and he
Like,
made the cover of a Pro Wrestling Illustrated, featured as a big story. So it's just great to see where wrestling is right now, and especially being content creators coming off of one of the biggest weekends in WrestleMania. But it's wrestling's so big now, you don't need to just wait for a WrestleMania to create great content. Every week there's
um,
something coming out. Monthly, there are bigger pay-per-views. When I was younger, I never thought we'd have this much wrestling to watch. Like at the end of
um,
WrestleMania weekend, I was almost sick of watching wrestling because I took in so
Oh,
much.
oh man, I'm with you. I took like a day or two off from social media and from wrestling, but obviously I still watch Raw and NXT and all that, but I just wasn't on here as much. Just like you said, there was so much wrestling because first of all, they still got the regular schedule, throughout the week. Then you got the Hall of Fame. Then you got Stand and Deliver, night one, night two, Monday Night Raw, and then again more NXT. So you're just like, oh man,
Yeah, and if that's just if you're watching WWE, if you're
yeah.
keeping up with Triller TV, they've got the collective where all the GCW shows are. So that's
Yeah.
another 7, 8 shows on the weekend. If
Mm.
you watch IWTV, there's another few Mania weekend shows. So it's just great where wrestling is now. It's amazing. George, you've been so graceful with your time today. Let people know where to find you, promote what you like to promote, let them know where you're at.
So you can find me pretty much on all platforms, the same name through all Wrestling Today podcast. I got recently started using Twitch, Kick, and doing YouTube live streams for WWE 2K24. But you'll mostly find me on TikTok doing my TikTok lives, posting content every day, and I may or may not show certain things on TikTok live. Some other content creators may not show.
Well, hey, if you enjoy what we do, you are going to enjoy what Wrestling Today podcast does. I would argue even more. And that's what's great about TikTok is it's such a good community that creators want to build each other up. So that's why we had to have you on today.